On Wellness 60 to 100, we explore how loneliness can quietly harm your health after 60. It's more than just feeling alone, it can accelerate aging and increase disease risk. If you're serious about healthy aging, don't ignore this silent epidemic affecting millions of seniors. Let's uncover what's really happening inside the brain. At 74, Mr. James Whitaker had always been active. A retired high school principal, he enjoyed gardening and morning walks. But after his wife passed away and his children moved to other states, the house grew quieter, and so did he. What started as a peaceful solitude slowly turned into chronic isolation. He stopped calling friends, skipped his daily walks, and often went days without speaking to anyone. Over time, James began experiencing strange symptoms. He struggled to concentrate, his memory faltered, and he felt constantly fatigued. He chalked it up to aging. But during a routine checkup, his doctor asked one simple question. "How often do you feel lonely?" That conversation led to a deeper investigation, and ultimately, a referral to a mental health specialist. The psychiatrist revealed something James hadn't expected. Chronic loneliness was actively harming his brain and body. It was increasing his cortisol levels, disrupting his sleep, and even impairing his immune system. Loneliness, he learned, was more than an emotion, it was a biological stressor with very real health consequences. James' story isn't rare. Millions of seniors silently suffer from isolation, unaware it's slowly damaging their health. But awareness is the first step toward healing. I'm Dr. Emily Carter, a board-certified psychiatrist specializing in geriatric mental health. With over 20 years of experience treating emotional and cognitive challenges in seniors, I've seen firsthand how loneliness can act as a silent, chronic stressor. In today's video, I'll break down how isolation impacts the aging brain, and what we can do to prevent it. Loneliness is more than a passing emotion, it's a hidden health threat, especially for adults over 60. On Wellness 60 to 100, we focus on helping seniors age well, and one of the most underestimated dangers is chronic isolation. Studies now show that loneliness can increase the risk of heart disease, dementia, depression, and even early death. It acts like long-term stress, damaging both brain and body over time. In this video, we'll explore 5 specific ways loneliness harms senior health, backed by science and explained by a psychiatrist. Understanding these effects is the first step toward prevention and restoring both connection and vitality in later life. 1. Loneliness triggers chronic stress hormones that harm the body. One of the most immediate and measurable impacts of loneliness is the elevation of stress hormones, particularly cortisol. For seniors, who already face physiological changes due to aging, this chronic activation of the body's stress response can be dangerous. When a person feels socially isolated, even if they aren't technically alone, the brain interprets that as a threat. From an evolutionary standpoint, isolation once meant vulnerability, so the brain activates the fight or flight system. This floods the body with cortisol, adrenaline, and other stress chemicals. While these hormones are useful in the short term, persistent elevation leads to harmful long-term effects, especially in people over 60. In older adults, chronic cortisol exposure is linked to weakened immune function, making it harder to fight off infections like pneumonia or flu. Higher blood pressure, raising the risk of stroke and heart disease. Increased belly fat and blood sugar, which can contribute to diabetes. Poor sleep quality, which further impairs brain function and mood. But perhaps most concerning is the impact on the brain. Cortisol directly shrinks parts of the hippocampus, the brain region responsible for memory and learning. Over time, seniors exposed to chronic loneliness can show early signs of cognitive decline, including forgetfulness, confusion, and slower thinking. It's important to realize that this process is largely silent. A senior may not feel extremely sad or visibly distressed, yet their body is operating in a state of physiological stress that accelerates aging and disease. Loneliness doesn't just feel bad, it biologically wears you down. The good news is that these effects can be reduced when social connection is restored. But the first step is recognizing that the body treats loneliness as a serious threat and reacts accordingly. 2. Loneliness fuels inflammation and chronic illness in seniors. Loneliness doesn't just affect the mind, it affects the body on a cellular level. One of the most serious consequences in seniors is how social isolation drives up inflammation, a key contributor to nearly every major chronic disease associated with aging. Let's break it down. When a senior experiences long-term loneliness, the body's immune system shifts into a pro-inflammatory state. This is not the helpful, short-term inflammation you get from a cut or infection. Instead, it's chronic, low-grade inflammation that quietly damages tissues over time. Studies have shown that socially isolated seniors have higher levels of C-reactive protein, CRP, and interleukin-6, IL-6, both markers of chronic inflammation. These markers are directly associated with increased risk for heart disease and stroke, type 2 diabetes, arthritis and joint pain, osteoporosis, neurodegenerative conditions like Alzheimer's. The connection here isn't just theoretical, it's biological. Chronic loneliness alters how immune cells behave, making them more likely to produce inflammatory substances. At the same time, the body's anti-inflammatory mechanisms become weaker, especially in people over 60. This means a lonely senior is walking around in a state of constant internal irritation, even if they look fine from the outside. Over months or years, this internal inflammation accelerates the aging process, damages organs, and increases vulnerability to infections and disease. And here's the hidden danger. Many seniors who feel lonely may visit the doctor for aches, fatigue, or chronic illness, without ever realizing that social disconnection is a core root cause of their symptoms. Addressing loneliness isn't just about improving mood, it's a critical piece of medical prevention. By restoring human connection, we don't just make life more enjoyable, we can actively reduce inflammation and lower the risk of disease. 3. Loneliness accelerates cognitive decline and dementia risk. One of the most alarming effects of loneliness in seniors is its strong link to cognitive decline and dementia. While memory loss is often considered a normal part of aging, mounting research shows that chronic loneliness can sharpen the rate of decline, sometimes dramatically. A major study by the University of Chicago found that lonely seniors experienced a 20% faster decline in cognitive abilities compared to those who were socially connected. Another 2020 report from the National Institute on Aging linked loneliness to a 40% increased risk of developing dementia, including Alzheimer's disease. Why does this happen? The answer lies in how loneliness affects the brain. Social interaction stimulates multiple areas of the brain responsible for memory, decision-making, and emotional regulation. When seniors are socially active, they engage in conversations, process facial expressions, remember names, and respond to cues, exercises that keep the brain sharp and adaptive. But when these stimuli are removed due to isolation, the brain gets less cognitive. Exercise. Over time, the neural pathways that support memory and logic begin to weaken, similar to how muscles atrophy from disuse. Additionally, chronic loneliness causes the brain to enter a state of hypervigilance. Seniors may begin to feel less safe, more anxious, or distrustful, even if there's no real threat. This mental stress taxes the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex, which are crucial areas for memory formation and critical thinking. Sleep disturbances caused by loneliness also compound the problem. Poor sleep reduces the brain's ability to clear beta amyloid, a toxic protein that accumulates in Alzheimer's disease. Most concerning of all, the early stages of loneliness-related cognitive decline are subtle. A senior may just seem a bit more forgetful, withdrawn, or slow to respond, not enough to raise immediate alarms. But without timely intervention, this slow erosion can become irreversible. Maintaining social engagement isn't just good company, it's a lifeline for brain health. 4. Loneliness weakens the immune system and worsens chronic illness. When we think of immune function, we often think of diet, exercise, or genetics. But few people realize that loneliness, especially chronic, persistent loneliness, can actually suppress immune system function, leaving seniors more vulnerable to infections, inflammation, and the worsening of chronic diseases. Here's how it works. Prolonged loneliness is a form of chronic stress. When seniors feel isolated, their bodies react by releasing higher levels of cortisol and adrenaline, the classic fight or flight stress hormones. While these hormones are useful in short bursts, ongoing exposure disrupts the immune system's ability to fight off bacteria, viruses, and even cancerous cells. Multiple studies confirm this link. A landmark study from UCLA found that people who reported higher levels of loneliness had lower levels of antiviral antibodies, and their white blood cells showed signs of chronic inflammation, a dangerous condition that's linked to heart disease, arthritis, type 2 diabetes, and Alzheimer's disease. What's more, loneliness also leads to poorer management of existing health conditions. Seniors who are isolated are more likely to skip medical appointments, forget to take medications, or fail to follow dietary restrictions. Without a support system, it's harder to manage complex treatment plans, which increases the risk of complications. Let's take an example. Mrs. Linda, age 74, has both high blood pressure and type 2 diabetes. After her husband passed away, she became increasingly withdrawn. She began eating irregularly, forgot to check her glucose levels, and had no one to help her keep track of her medications. Within months, her blood pressure spiked, and her A1C levels became dangerously high. This isn't rare, it's a pattern seen in thousands of seniors each year. Loneliness doesn't just hurt emotionally. It breaks down the body's natural defenses, turning manageable conditions into life-threatening ones. That's why addressing loneliness isn't a luxury or a kindness. It's a critical part of disease prevention and treatment for older adults. 5. Loneliness leads to unhealthy lifestyle habits in seniors. Loneliness doesn't just affect the mind, it slowly alters behavior in ways that can deeply damage the body. One of the most overlooked consequences of long-term loneliness is how it encourages unhealthy lifestyle habits in seniors, creating a feedback loop of declining physical and mental health. When people feel isolated, they tend to move less. Physical activity drops significantly among lonely seniors, especially those who lack social support or motivation. A walk around the block becomes less appealing when there's no one to join. Over time, this can lead to muscle loss, poor balance, and an increased risk of falls, a dangerous scenario for older adults. Nutrition is another major concern. Many lonely seniors stop cooking nutritious meals for themselves. Why make an effort when you're eating alone every day? Studies show that seniors who live and eat alone are more likely to skip meals, eat processed food, or consume too many comfort foods high in sugar, fat, and salt. This contributes to obesity, high blood pressure, and type 2 diabetes, conditions already prevalent in aging populations. Sleep quality also suffers. Loneliness is strongly linked with poor sleep hygiene. Seniors may stay up late watching television or scrolling on their phones, leading to irregular sleep patterns. They may wake frequently at night, experience restless sleep, or feel tired throughout the day, all of which negatively impact immune health, cognition, and mood. Add to this the risk of substance use. Though less discussed, some seniors turn to alcohol or sedative medications to cope with feelings of isolation and anxiety. This not only disrupts physical health but can interact dangerously with existing medications. In essence, loneliness acts like a hidden switch that triggers a cascade of poor habits. These behaviors, less movement, poor diet, poor sleep, and risky coping mechanisms, gradually erode an aging body's resilience. To break this cycle, interventions must go beyond just treating symptoms. They need to address social connection as a foundation of senior health, promoting activities that restore purpose, structure, and engagement in daily life. If loneliness in seniors is ignored, the health consequences can be severe and irreversible. Isolation increases the risk of heart disease, stroke, dementia, and depression. It also weakens the immune system, making the body more vulnerable to infections and chronic inflammation. Over time, cognitive decline may accelerate, leading to early-onset Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia. Seniors may also neglect medications, skip meals, or fall into substance misuse, all of which hasten physical decline. Left unaddressed, loneliness shortens lifespan. Studies suggest it carries the same mortality risk as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Recognizing and intervening early is critical to preserving long-term health and independence in older adults. As a psychiatrist, I cannot stress enough how vital it is to treat loneliness as a real health risk, not just an emotional state. Seniors and their families must be proactive. Start by building daily routines that include social contact, even if it's a short phone call, a neighborhood walk, or joining a local community center. Volunteering, group exercise, or hobby clubs can provide meaningful engagement and restore a sense of purpose. If mobility is limited, explore virtual support groups or telehealth counseling to stay emotionally connected. Families should also check in regularly and look for warning signs like withdrawn behavior or sleep changes. And don't hesitate to seek professional help. Therapy and support groups designed for older adults can be incredibly effective. Remember, connection is medicine. Fostering relationships can improve not just mood, but memory, sleep, and even heart health. Addressing loneliness could be the most important step in healthy aging. If you found this video helpful, please give it a like and subscribe to Wellness 60 to 100 for more insights on healthy aging. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new episode. Have a question or personal story about loneliness and later life? Share it in the comments. Your experience could help others too.